once again to PM Dojo's free community events. I'm so excited having you join us today. So let's just get right into it. I'm Bernice, the events lead at PM Dojo. I want to get to know you as well. Where are you joining us from? Tell us your name, your location, and your expectations from today's event. And do not fail to share your socials so that we'll connect with you as well in case you really want to get to connect with other designers or other persons in product roles. And while you are doing that, please do well to keep up with us on our socials as well. Do not fail to follow us. Do not fail to share. Do not fail to bring on board people you think would be interested in what we'll be discussing today. It promises to be exciting. It promises to be insightful as well. So yes, I'll be looking through the chat section right now to see and to greet view one or two persons who are joining us currently. Awesome. So I can see Panda. Oh, you're joining. So you're Julie joining from Kentucky. Welcome once again. So everyone, do not fail. I'll just give you some few minutes to go bring on board people you feel will be interested in today's session. So while you are that, I'll be giving you a brief introduction as to what we do at PM Dojo. But then before, I'll quickly read up our agenda for today's event. So we'll be chatting with our speaker, who goes by the name Wem. Thereafter, I'll be doing a Q&A session where you get to ask questions in whatever area that is not unclear to you. Then we'll be drawing down the curtains. Now let's talk about PM Dojo. For those who are just hearing about us for the first time, or maybe you saw a promotional ad and you got wondering as to, what's PM Dojo? What do they stand for? So PM Dojo is a diverse and inclusive global learning community, and we help people grow in product roles throughout their careers. So if you're looking forward to transitioning into product, if you're looking forward to grow up skill in product roles, do not fail to reach out to us. And we are on a mission to make product careers more equal, accessible, diverse, and inclusive for all. So please do not fail. I will recap that. And to join us, I will also be dropping in a few a link to our website where you need to join. So thereafter, I'll quickly be telling you about what we do, the community events, what the community events initiative is about. So at PM Dojo, we host fun-free events, community events. The one you're currently joining us in now, they are super free. And in order not to miss out, we have limited spots. In order not to miss out and be the first to get notified whenever we are having our fun-free community events, go over to our website and subscribe not to get miss out in any of the notifications or any events that will soon be unfolding in the near future. And we at PM Dojo, we also offer awesome and amazing. You get to learn and gain industry experience and that will help you transition or grow in your career. And at PM Dojo, we believe in something. We believe that products and design is a craft that can be learned and honed by doing instead of just randomly reading about it. So this is why we offer unique learning tracks, and that's called the Product Accelerator program. You get to collaborate as a cross-functional, and you take real-world problems. You go through problems discovery and solutions discovery as well. And yes, you get to launch your product live in the market in just 10 weeks. Yes, so good to be true, right? And to be a part of it, we have numerous learning tracks. We have the core industry and the light tracks. For further information and details, do not fail to check our website. So I'll also be dropping the link to getting access to this during the course of the event. Okay, without wasting much of the time, we'll be diving right into it. But then before we get started, I want to keep reading through the chat. I want you to make sure you go grab a person, at least one person. Trust me when I say it's going to be an insightful and exciting time with us at today's event. So in the next few minutes, I'm so generous here. I don't want anybody to miss out in today's event. So go share on your socials. And while you are doing that, introduce yourself on the chat section, and you could drop a link to your socials, your LinkedIn and other platforms that you think you are very active, social media platforms that you are very active on. So drop them there and get connecting with people. So before we call on our speaker, we'll be bringing on board like some amazing product leaders. I'll be calling on our founder shortly, the founder of PM Dojo, shortly, to give us a team or two or give us a brief insight as to product roles. And in case you do have questions, I will repeat, get your notepads and your pen, jot down. And in case you do have questions during the course of our session, do not fail to post them there. Do not fail to drop them in the chat section, and we'll be reading them out. All right. I'll be calling her now. Yes, Bosky, are you able to hear us?
Yes, I can hear. I can hear you. Welcome, everyone. Looks like I have to apologize here. First of all, thank you for taking the time to meet with us. Looks like we have some technical challenges with the time zones. Our speaker today, YM, she is based in way in the other side of the world, and so there was some mix-up with regards to the time. And unfortunately, she's not able to join. I really apologize. But if for all of you who are hanging out here for the next 30 to 45 minutes, I can definitely do a Q&A for how do you present your work as a designer. I can introduce myself a little bit just so that you know that you can actually trust me and why even spend the time listening to me instead of our speaker. I will never be able to replace the value that YM would be bringing, but just a little bit. I've been in the tech industry doing both design as well as product management now for over 2 decades. I've also hired and built product teams and design teams and build the design processes in companies. I coach designers and PMs from big tech, small companies, and also help people get into a design or a PM role. So again, deeply apologize for this glitch that we are having. And for those of you who would still like to stay with us, happy to make this an interactive Q&A session and answer questions. Think of it like a 45-minute of coaching and just picking my brain from my career. So again, really apologize. We will try to reschedule this event with YM for another day, but I'm here at your disposal to answer any questions that you might have. If you want to put them on the chat, let me start just with a little bit of an icebreaker. Well, not an icebreaker, but a question that I always get from the designers that I've managed. And that is, when I'm presenting my work, any kind of a creative work or any kind of my designs, because design can be subjective sometimes, and there are so many opinions, and everybody at work starts jumping in to kind of give their critique or their viewpoint, whether they have experience in design or not. How do I deal with it? I'm not sure if folks who are joining us today have experienced it. I've definitely experienced it, and I see this a lot with designers. If you have a question like that, happy to take that on. If you have questions around how do you defend the designs in front of senior leaders, can definitely talk about that. Maybe you have a question around how do I make a compelling case when I'm presenting work? How do I get people when I'm presenting work, how do I get people co-designing with me so that there is buy-in, and I don't have to continue to convince others to believe? How do I create a very compelling design work? How do I present in front of leaders or cross-functional teams in a way that is engaging? Any of these questions that might be coming, these are some of the ones that I hear a lot from designers. But if you have any of these questions, just type it on the chat and I'm happy to do a Q&A. Otherwise, we can end this event a little bit early and work towards rescheduling the event with Wime. Can you share ways beginners could get started in product design career? Okay, there are quite a few different ways. One is, I'll talk about a couple of things that a lot of people by default do when they are trying to get into design. First and foremost, people are going to start signing up for a boot camp, right? That is one of very, very obvious things that a lot of people will do. Some people will start maybe learning on their own, which is self-learning. There are lots of free resources so that you can kind of learn basic UI visual design. Some people might actually go to university to learn typography and iconography and just creative work. Some people might be inherently kind of comfortable with a little bit of designing work. The key is, how do you then translate all of this and get your first job as a designer? And something that happens a lot is that every single job, you have to go with a portfolio, especially for design work that actually showcases your work. So a couple of things for you to think about as you're just starting out. One, when you have a portfolio, instead of having 5, 7, 10 different projects and case studies, have maybe 2 to 3, but don't try to have a real user problem that you're trying to solve. A lot of the times designers will pick a UX problem. And at the end of the day, it's not a UX problem, it's a user problem that you want to work on, that you can actually showcase how you're able to think like a designer. How do you go about the design process? How do you actually see a lot of the challenges that come up when you're designing and solving that user problem? And how do you then go about solving those user problems? And so it is less about just kind of making it a very, very visually compelling case study, because what happens is that with all of these fake projects and not real projects, your portfolios are going to look exactly identical to everyone else's portfolio who are all working on these unreal and fake projects. And so in order to really stand out, if you're working on case studies for your portfolio, something to think about is, how do you find real user problems? So let's talk about that very briefly. The good part of living in a crazy world that we are today is that there are countless problems around us that people around us are facing. And so as you are talking to people, as you're observing things around you, you would probably have some good hunches of what kind of typical user problems are existing. And so pick a problem, go through all the validation, go through all of those stages, but at every point, try to create your portfolio in a way that it doesn't demonstrate fill in the blank skills, but it actually demonstrates your product thinking and systems thinking skills. So that'll be one. The second thing would be, you can definitely join some learning opportunities and things like that. There are lots of free resources. You can also join PM Dojo as a community. We have designers who actually get that real world experience and mentoring and coaching as well. So hopefully that answered your question. If you have any follow-up questions, I'm happy to share more clarity on that. Let's look at the next question. How would I communicate and collaborate with others if I am the only designer in the team? Yes. Then follow-up question for clarity. Are there other designers in your organization, or are you the only designer in that pod or the product team, or within that smaller team within the larger organization? So if you can maybe clarify that on the chat, because there are a few different ways to actually communicate that, that would be awesome. And then I'll jump back to your question, Ben. So if you're just able to put that on the chat. As a product manager, do I need to have product design skills? It depends on what kind of a product manager you are. If you are in a very, very technical product role, like a technical PM, maybe you are working on a very, very highly technical, like, technical problem. The users are technical. It's very, very complex from a, again, technical standpoint. Maybe your infrastructure PM, things like that. You may get by not having strong product design sense. I'm going to reframe skills to sense. So that is one. But for most part, as a product manager, it is absolutely, absolutely, absolutely essential to have product design sense, a strong design sense. And I'll explain why. One, if you are fortunate enough to have a dedicated designer in your team, um, if you have a strong design sense, you will be able to collaborate with your designer in a much more better way. You're going to be a partner. You'll be able to do a lot of the problem discovery and the solution discovery together as partners, as opposed to jumping on requirements and handing it out to your designer so that they can actually translate it into wireframes and user flows. That's not how the real world works. And that kind of doesn't help. So when I say design sense, I'm not talking about making pixel perfect and all of those things. I'm talking about, are you able to visualize? Are you able to concept sketch? Are you able to give feedback to your designer that actually makes sense objectively and not just subjectively? Well, it kind of looks nice color. Can we change the color? Can we change? That's not design skills, right? And I see a lot of PMs do that. I've certainly done that at some point in my career as well. But if I truly want to have this close partnership relationship, where that mutual respect is there, it is absolutely, absolutely essential to have that strong design sense, which is something why even in a PM Dojo and our accelerator programs, we've baked into it so that as PMs, you get those skills. And as designers, you also understand a lot of the business acumen and a lot of the decision making as to how PMs are making those decisions. A lot of smaller companies and startups, or even larger companies where they have to innovate and they have to disrupt the market, as a product manager is absolutely, absolutely important to know basic design sense skills. Right now, these days, you have a lot of tools where you don't need to have very, very strong pixel perfect skills from designing in order to be wireframing, in order to be prototyping. I've done, for a long time, paper prototyping when I didn't know how to use Photoshop or Sketch or some of those things, Figma, Balsamic. So hopefully I've answered that question. You don't need designer level skills. So I'm not asking product managers to go and start learning Sketch and all of those different tools, but you should definitely have very strong design sense. And in a lot of companies, you need to be able to, the roles between designer and a product manager is very, very blurry, very, very blurry. And sometimes in some companies, you may even have a shared designer. So as a product manager, you absolutely have to have the skills to go in, validate, talk to users, learn how to do some basic wireframing and prototyping. And these design skills also come in very handy when you have to visualize and whiteboard in front of senior leaders, because senior leaders won't have time to be reading these lengthy documents. So hopefully that answered your question. Hannah, nice to meet you, Hannah. Let's take a look at your question. What are the differences between UX and product design, and how can you prevent or avoid mixing the two up? Let me see, how do I answer? This is, we can do a whole talk on this. Very briefly, Hannah, UX is the big umbrella that includes things. Basically, it means user experience, right? And that's where the X comes from. And there are several elements in user experience, right, that you have to think about. Things from things about UI architecture, from how your site, your page, your screens, they need to be architected, what elements go where, the interactions, copy, from what kind of copy needs to go where, how the layout needs to be, what should it say. A lot of elements come in under the broader umbrella of UX. Now, there are certainly roles which are UX designer, and then there are a lot of roles that are product designer. UX design and product design sometimes can be used interchangeably. But the key difference that I have seen, and I've hired both for both roles, is that as a product designer, my expectations as a hiring manager are going to be very, very different than a UX designer. As a UX designer, you could also work in design agencies. You could also work on any project that is that needs UX work, that needs design work. But as a product designer, you are going to be part of a product team, a pod, or a product team at a company. And you are going to be thinking about the overall experience of the product or a part of the product, depending on how the product teams are structured in the organization. And so this is here where that systems level thinking, that holistic end-to-end design, a lot of the times elements from service design come in as well in product design. You are truly a partner to a product manager, and it is not so much like I'm going to wait for user stories to come in and then I'm going to translate those user stories into wireframe and prototype. That is not what a product designer does. They are involved with a product manager right from the very beginning, or even with a founder right from the very beginning, to start strategizing about what that experience should look like. And so what we do, even in PM Dojo, is that you are going to be working right from the very beginning, thinking about, what is the problem? How do we go about actually understanding what the problem is? And there's this true partnership. How do we go about trying to understand what are some of the hypotheses about this problem? And then how do we go about validating or invalidating a lot of these hypotheses? Then we start talking to users. You're involved as a product designer in a lot of research. You are working with your PM on thinking about what are the right questions to ask, because these are the things that is going to influence that overall experience strategy and what that experience should look like. And so it is a much more meatier role is what I've seen. But a lot of the times in companies, UX designer and product designer can be used interchangeably. But think of product design, product designer versus UX designer. The key difference is that as a product designer, you really need to have good systems level thinking and holistic thinking, and you're designing for the product. But I have seen companies that actually use these roles interchangeably. So hopefully that answered your question. Please put that in the chat. For Ben, the follow-up, and your question was, how can I communicate and collaborate with others if I am the only designer in the team? And basically what that means, thank you, Ben, for the clarification, is that the only designer in the organization, and it is not a startup. Ooh. I feel for you, Ben. That is a tricky spot. If your organization has strong design leadership, then of course, if you lean in on the design leaders at your organization, you can definitely get a lot of help, because a lot of times if you're the sole designer, it can get very frustrating, because people don't understand what design really does and the value of a designer. So you're kind of left all by yourself trying to convince others, this is what my role is. This is why this role is important. This is why design needs to be involved. This is why design needs to have a seat at the table. If there is a strong design leader at your company, even though you might be the sole designer, they can actually create this safe space and set those expectations with people at the higher up. And it's not just about changing the color of the button or the placement of the button, which a lot of sole designers can find themselves into this corner. So that is one, right? Lean in on a strong leader. The second thing I would say is that if you don't have a strong kind of a design leader, you are the only designer and you are the only one who kind of knows about design. There are a few things you can do. So one, I think building relationship. I cannot stress this enough. A lot of people, especially I think I hear this a lot from designers, is that I like to do my work and I don't like to play the game. And I think, it's not about playing the game. I think it is influencing and stakeholder management, which is unfortunately a part and parcel if we want to work within a company. Otherwise, we can freelance, right? But if you're working at a company, we have to start getting better at influencing people. And and the only way that I've seen over my career so far is that when I have actually built those bridges and got to know these key influencers and get them as allies, I've basically been able to like the battle doesn't seem like a uphill battle anymore. So I think building relationship is one thing that's really important. A lot of the times, what I've also seen, and I've worked with my designers and my team to do when we found ourselves in a situation where I've had only one designer in my team and the organization wasn't quite bought into the design philosophy, is that before any big presentation where we had to present an experience strategy or a design of a potential of a future product, because there used to be everyone jumping onto conclusions or everybody had feedback and it would just become a big gong show, was that I would actually ask the designer to go and socialize what we were going to present beforehand. And what that does is that it helps you gather some of the potential objections beforehand so that either you can have one-on-one conversation with some of these influencers in the company and either bring them onto your side or perhaps deal with that potential objection beforehand. And what that does is that that other person, that stakeholder feels like, okay, you understand where I'm coming from. And when you're finally doing that presentation in front of a bigger crowd, you're actually going to start getting nods. And it takes one nod for others to start nodding. And it takes one suspicion or one kind of a clarification or one disagreement from one stakeholder to get all the other stakeholders also start disagreeing and pointing holes in the design. So hopefully, Ben, that helps. If you have follow-up questions, definitely share them. The third thing that I would definitely recommend here is to try to understand the business levers of your organization. So a lot of the times designers really, really struggle to explain their decision about designing something in a certain way if they cannot connect it with the business drivers and the business goals. And so this is a skill, the business acumen skill is really a must-have for all designers. If you're able to connect those dots, because within an organization, a lot of your stakeholders and senior higher-ups might not truly understand the rationale for good experience and the long-term effects. But if you're able to connect those with the long-term, short-term business drivers, you are going to have it much easier to actually get that communication done. In terms of collaboration, I would say I've seen a lot of good work happen when you're able to invite them for co-designing and getting them involved to get their ideas. And there are so many tools and methods that you can use, whether it is like mini workshops with assumption mapping, whether it is mini workshops with getting brainstorming ideas and then doing silent vote. And so people feel heard. And that, again, helps get you that buy-in and credibility as the sole designer in the organization. So hopefully that helped, Ben. If not, please add any follow-up questions. I'm happy to answer. Let's take a look at the next question. What are the steps to take your projects from a prototype to a live app? Really, really great question. I'll need some clarification here. Can you explain to me, are you trying to take this project at a company where you're working with a team? Are you doing this as a freelancer? Are you trying to just take this from a case study to a live app? Can you give me some context? And I believe that is Julie, if I'm not mistaken. So Julie, if you're able to maybe clarify, I'm going to take, you are doing it as a freelancer. Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. I've also shared a really good write-up from one of our past events that we had done. and it talks about how do you break into the tech industry with the right UX problem. That was the event. I don't like the right UX problem phrasing, just because it is not about a UX problem, it's about a user problem. But that was the event. Take a read here, and that should kind of give you some idea for how do you actually pick a right user problem? How do you go about solving it for your portfolios and things like that? Okay, so Julie's question was, what are some of the steps to take your project from a prototype to a live app? So as a designer, you can always, go through an actual process and a journey where you validate the problem, you create some mock-ups, wireframe, and you prototype. How do you then take it one step further and actually show and demo a live app or a live product that you have launched, right? It doesn't just stay at a prototype stage. So a lot of different ways. One, you can ask your developer buddies, friends that you know to help you build that. And of course, you want to make sure that just like in the real world, you don't just hand off your designs to your developer. The developers are really involved from the very beginning, because when, the way you approach building a prototype and the way you approach building a product are very two different things. When you are, as a product designer, really thinking through how do you build a product, what are some of the things adjacent that I need to start thinking about, you really have to think about quite a few things. One, what is the problem worth solving? Is there a real problem? What are some of the unmet needs in the market that is not being catered to by existing solutions? How are people solving the problem today? And all of those good stuff. But at the same time, you also want to start thinking about, what does it do for the business? Why would a business even want to solve this problem when there are so many other plethora of other ways that you can solve the problem, right? So the two pieces really meet. So there are lots of things that you have to think about as a product designer right from the very, very beginning. And this is why I was kind of mentioning the big difference between, UX design and product design, and how in PM Dojo as well, we work through a lot of those things. Once you've kind of tried to figure that out, you really have to think about a few different ways to start minimizing the risks. One is, of course, the usability risk. Is this what the way we solve it, is this going to be usable enough that people find it, our target users find it intuitive in order to actually use it when we launch this product? So it's not just enough to launch it. You also have to show the impact, and you have to make sure that it is a product that is being used by people. Because these days it's so easy to launch a product and launch an app, right? There is a reason why 90% of the startups fail. There's a reason why 90% of the ideas don't work. It's because people just launch something. But if you're not able to show the impact, and if you're not able to show and demonstrate that people are actually using it, the adoption is high, and we are not kind of running through a lot of those challenges, that is really the power of launching an app, right? So in the beginning, you have to really think through some of those things. You also have to think about the feasibility risk and how you can minimize that. And you also have to think about the business viability risk, right? Everyone, it's very easy to launch free products and freemium products. But at the end of the day, this is why you have to have that business acumen skills and thinking about the business model as well, is that, there's one thing to launch something free. And the moment you introduce a fee or price that people have to pay, and if people are not ready to pay for it, then it really it's not a feasible product. So you have to think about a lot of those things. So I'm assuming all of this has been done up till the point that the prototype is ready, right? So we have a prototype, and all of these risks have been thought about, managed, navigated, mitigated, all of those things. So now you can ask your developer buddies to get involved, helping you take it to the finish line by launching the product. And then you also want to make sure that you're able to measure, right? What are some of the right metrics and things like that, and the impact. So that is one piece. The second thing that you could do is find other freelance developers to work on it. You may have to pay them. If you ask your friends, of course, you may get by not paying for them. The third thing would be, you could actually use no-code tools, low-code tools and no-code tools. There are plenty of them to actually build it yourself without having to write a line of code. So that is definitely a venue. If you really want to do it well, so that what you build is actually going to be something that hiring managers and companies are going to care, and you also want to kind of learn how to do that and get that cross-functional team um, experience of working with a cross-functional team, working with senior leaders to take that idea and prototype all the way to the final launch, join PM Dojo in the core track or the industry track, and you'll be able to kind of take through all of those things. So hopefully that answered your question. Then one more question. Awesome. What do you think about fully remote working mode to a UX designer? Will it cause inefficient communication or lack of trust for the team and stakeholders? This is a really good question. I would say yes and no. Um, I've definitely had remote designers even before the pandemic. I've hired remote designers. I've been remote designer and a PM myself. Um, there are several companies that are remote first companies. Even before the pandemic, they started as remote first and they've continued as remote first. And so something that I've seen is that a lot of it depends on the culture of the company. If they are indeed a remote first company, a lot of the norms and the rituals in the company are going to support remote work. And the way they work, the way they collaborate, the way they workshop, the way they make decisions, it all enables this kind of trust and communication. And yes, there are going to be problems, and yes, trust will be broken, but they are set up for better success for in remote first companies, right? If there is inherently a trust issue with stakeholders, whether you're remote or whether you're in person, these kind of challenges will show up. Absolutely. So I think, this is where the point that I was making before, building those relationships is really, really important. And getting to know your stakeholders at a personal level is very, very important. I see a lot of designers, a lot of PMs, lots of people at work, the way they try to build relationships with the stakeholders is actually setting up meetings to discuss projects. And that's not how you build relationship, because it becomes about work. And so we do need to invest some time, whether it is once a month, whether it is every 2 weeks, just having casual chats, just, what's going on, what's happening, what are your thoughts about something in the industry that's going on. It's not related with this high stake project, that we are working on, where emotions can be a little bit high. So I think building those relationships, irrespective of whether you're on site or in remote, is key. But of course, in a remote setting, building those relationships beforehand, before you can actually start collaborating on a problem, on a project, on a product, is absolute key. And you can do this in a lot of different ways where it kind of feels casual, right? It could be virtual coffee, could be beverage of your choice, or sometimes it could even be virtual lunches and things like that, whatever you can kind of do in a remote setting. And the third thing is finding ways where perhaps sometimes you may have to, maybe once a quarter or something, if in your company people come together, it can help sometimes to, again, start building those personal relationships. But the third thing is that a lot of the times I've seen designers, the way they structure the meetings and the presentations of working, it becomes about meetings. And something I used to do a lot in Atlassian when I was working there was that I wouldn't call my presentations and meetings as meetings, because it gets boring and people have all these different notions anytime they hear meeting. I would actually reframe and run them as workshops. So my job increased a lot, where instead of just presenting things and following an agenda, I actually had to really upskill on becoming a facilitator. And so that really helped a lot with building relationships, getting people involved, people getting buy-in. And these mini workshops would happen sometimes 15 minutes, sometimes 45 minutes, sometimes an hour, depending on what we were talking about. And that really, really helped cut through all of the clutter and this meetings about meetings that happen at work a lot. So hopefully then that helped answer your question. We have another question that came up. How do I showcase my UX design skills in my project management journey? I'll need some clarification here. So whoever asked, I don't have your name here. Are you talking about project management journey? Are you talking about product management journey? Why do you believe you need to showcase UX design skills if it is in a project management journey? If you can please clarify, and then I'll be able to answer. A lot of these questions, these are great questions. The answer really depends on the context. And so hence I'm asking these clarifying questions. How can I overcome being nervous while presenting my work? I am nervous right now, very, very nervous even answering the questions. I'm also a very big introvert. So that I think causes, and of course, when I'm looking at myself in the video, doesn't make it easy. It's very normal to feel nervous about presenting, your work, talking about, these high stake decisions, right? Like at work, most conversations end up becoming high stake. We don't feel like being proven wrong sometimes, or a lot of times. There might be some very senior leaders, and we want to make sure that we're building credibility. People trust us, they like our work. We've spent a lot of time on our work, and so we don't want it to be completely kind of kiboshed, while presenting. Like, there are a lot of different reasons why we can feel nervous, right? I can tell you some of the things that I have done, some of the things that, I worked with my teams when I was leading them as designers or PMs and researchers, some of the things that I would actually work with my teams. And they seem to work quite a bit. I also work with a lot of these tools and techniques and methods, even with our fellows who join our PM Dojo community, because being nervous is just being human. So I think first and foremost is to just acknowledge that and feel like, it's okay to be nervous. Sometimes I think feeling nervous comes from the imposter syndrome, where, so I used to get that a lot. I think a lot of the times being the only woman in the team, or being an immigrant and moving to US and Canada and working there. So sometimes it was also just being the only woman of color in an executive room. There were lots of different reasons why I've had that imposter syndrome. And it kind of makes you question, whether truly, do I belong here? Do I actually deserve to have a seat here? And that can also add to the nervousness. And so something that I've learned, something that, quite a few of my mentors worked with me, is acknowledging that feeling nervous is okay and it makes us human. Whether my teeth are chattering, or whether I find that and I feel that my feet and my legs start shaking, or my fingers and my hands are shaking, or maybe, that it is okay. So few things that you can do to help you navigate this realm of being nervous. I don't think we can overcome. I don't think, because every time you're going to do something new, every time you're going to push yourself to do something new, every time you're challenging yourself to grow, that nervousness feeling will come, right? Because that is what pushes us to grow, because we're trying to do something that we cannot do just closing our eyes, right? It is a new skill, and we are kind of honing that skill. So I think feeling nervous is going to be there. Otherwise, we have to fake it. And if we fake that confident self, I have found that the audience and your stakeholders do not connect with you, and they're going to feel more suspicious about your credibility. So first and foremost, I would say just acknowledge being nervous, practice, practice, practice. I have worked with my team members very diligently to make them practice in front of a mirror, to make them practice in front of the screen, whatever it takes. Nervousness can come a lot of different ways. It could be, some people may not like the sound of their voice, and that's what contributes to feeling nervous. Some people don't like how they look when they're presenting, and that leads to nervousness. Some people might get nervous because they're not comfortable with the topic. So there are lots of different things. And some people are nervous about all the questions they're going to get asked by the stakeholders. And what if I don't know the answer? What if I just forget everything? What if I just go blank? So there are lots of different aspects of feeling nervous. So when you start practicing them, I think it helps, to just kind of at least know the material in hand. The second thing that I would say is pre-socializing. So that is something I have seen magic happen with people when you actually do these one-off presentations or one-off sharing, one-off conversations with your stakeholders or people you're going to be presenting your work beforehand in a one-on-one setting, so that you can at least know going into this bigger meeting that you have some people who are going to hold your back, and that can help with the confidence. The third one is actually really being good in the job, in your job. There is no substitute to that. As a designer, as a product manager, it is really a craft. And so no amount of reading a book, no amount of just going and doing a course or a boot camp is actually going to give you confidence, because the real world does not fit within that constraint-free fake world from the courses and the books, right? That's not what reality is. And so the more reps you have and the more reps you do, the more practice you can have of what it's going to be like in the real world. It's going to actually help with that confidence. And I would say the next one would be, not feel the pressure that you have to know all of the answers. I have seen this a lot of the time. I think a lot of us, get pressure ourselves so much that we have to know all of the answers. And don't want to have this like I don't know when you're presenting your work. That adds to that feeling of nervousness. And so if what is the worst thing that can happen? They'll ask you a question that you don't know, and you can always say, that's a really great question, let me get back to you. And that's okay. And when you do that, and then actually follow up, right? And not just forget about it, actually follow up. That's what builds your credibility. And the more credibility you're able to build, you will start feeling less and less and less nervous. It'll never go away. At least it hasn't gone away for me. It hasn't gone away for a lot of people that I work with on a regular basis. But I think your confidence will start becoming stronger than the nervousness. And know that the imposter syndrome and the nervousness is very, very real and a human feeling. And if you're not nervous when you're doing something new that is actually pushing you towards growth, then there's a very fine line. And this was something one of my bosses told me way back when I used to work at Atlassian. And that is, if you don't feel nervous, if you don't feel that imposter syndrome when you're trying to do something new, Bosky, just remember that there's a very fine line between being human and being that jerk, that overconfident jerk that no one wants to work with. So I think nervousness is good. It just kind of keeps you human. So hopefully that helped. But that was a really, really good question. Product management, not project. Okay. How do I showcase my UX design skills in my product management journey? There are lots of different ways. I'm not sure where in your product management journey you are. Are you already a product manager? Are you an entry-level product manager? Are you an experienced product manager? Are you trying to find your first product management job? How much of product management do you know? There are all these important questions again. Entry-level. So have you already been a product manager and you're going for an entry-level role, or this is your first job as a PM that you're trying to get into straight out of school? While we wait, I'm just going to share, just trying to be conscious of the time as well. So there are lots of different ways that you can actually showcase the intersection between good design and good product management. There's a big overlap. There's a very, very big overlap, because a good product cannot exist without good experience. None of your users actually care about what the underlying technology is, unless and until your target users are these technical folks and developers. They might get excited about the underlying technology. But as a user, just think about all these different products that you use, right, on a daily basis. Do you actually care about what tech stack did someone use to build that? No. You are going to care about what is that experience. Does it make your life easy? Was it easy to use? Was it intuitive enough? did it solve your problem? Did it solve it better than how you're solving that same problem today? And so the overlap between good product management and what good product management looks like and what good experience design looks like, there is a lot of overlap. And so how do you showcase that will be to actually learn about it and apply that to a real problem. So if you're looking for your first role, entry level role, you're going to unfortunately experience that chicken and egg problem that we talk about a lot in the industry, where every single job, even at an entry level, will ask for 2, 3, sometimes even 5 years of actual product management experience. And so, given where the market is right now, you're also having to compete against not just folks like yourself who are trying to get that first entry level role, you're also competing against PMs who already have 2, 3, 4, 5 years experience, right? Who are going for those same types of roles right now. So you'll have to fit that objection that you're going to get in every single job interview or up time that when you're going to be applying for the job. So anything that you can do to actually build and launch a live product so that you can demo that while you're trying to think like a designer as well. And really kind of approach all this problem discovery, solution discovery that we've been talking about in a way that a real PM and a real designer would. And automatically, when you're thinking about those product mindset skills that you want to showcase in your portfolio, you will start to showcase that. So the first thing will be to actually learn about it. You can definitely read books. You can definitely join events. You can definitely join PM Dojo, because we do teach all of those things, and you actually get to work in a cross-functional team to take a fuzzy idea all the way into launching a product. We also partner with companies where in the industry track, you can actually get matched up with a real company and work with a cross-functional team to launch a product so that you really get that real world experience. And with all the knowledge, skills, mentorship, relationship building in the network, in the industry, and all of those things for life as a community where you can actually learn and grow. So again, you can read about it, self-learn, and put that into practice, and that's how you're going to show. I wouldn't say that even for designers, learning what tools to use is immaterial. You want to show that product thinking skills. Are you able to think through all of these different things that we talked about, all of those different risks, usability, viability, feasibility, how you're able to overcome those challenges? How are you able to really think from being obsessed about your customers or target users? How do you go about validating that it is the real pain point that you're trying to solve for in your product, not just a symptom? Problem spaces can be very deceiving. A lot of the times I see candidates solving and justifying why they solved a particular problem when that was not even the real problem. That was more or less a symptom, and the bigger problem still remains. And so, you never get that adoption on your product. You never get people using the product. So hopefully that helps. So it's not so much about showing you can use Figma. That's not what design skills are. You want to show that you can think like a designer, and then you can work with a PM like a designer. And the same thing goes vice versa as well for a designer. It's not about Figma. It's not about Sketch. It is about that product thinking skills that you need to demonstrate, and you need to demonstrate those business acumen skills and how you overcome challenges, what challenges that come through. That's going to make you more relatable to hiring managers and companies, because those hiring managers in these roles experience these challenges day in and day out. They don't come from, when a candidate comes in from this ivory tower of a sanitized version of these fake projects, that's not how the real world works. So I've never seen disagreements at work get completely solved by frameworks and templates, and then everybody sings Kumbaya. That is not how the real world works, never, even in the best of the best companies. So hopefully that helped. I know we are 3 minutes before the hour. Are there any other questions that I can help? Any other questions? Okay. Well, if there are no other questions, this was fun. And again, thank you so much for joining us today and being okay with the fact that we had a little bit of a mix up in the event. We're going to try to reschedule the event. I've put in the link if anyone's interested to learn more about PM Dojo's accelerator programs. It's really unique in the market right now. There isn't anything like this. So that you know where you can really learn and get that real world experience and working in a cross-functional team and with lifelong mentorship and community. Feel free to check it out. And if you have any questions, connect with me on LinkedIn. Happy to answer. And with that, Bernice, anything from your end? Okay. Well, thank you so much. Have an amazing, amazing day, everyone. And thank you for joining us today.